What are all the things that the individual player does that contributes to the collective performance? We've taken a lot of the mystery out of the rest.
Well, John, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
So John Hollinger is at the center of basketball analytics, and there's a lot of lessons for businesses. So first, tell us about your passion and how you got to basketball analytics in the first place.
Sure. Well, I grew up a huge sports fan, not just basketball, but baseball, football, soccer, you know, basically anything. So I took note when Bill James, who's sort of the father of this whole thing, started doing what he does with baseball. That I was a teenager at the time, and I read all his books, and it completely resonated with me. So I started thinking immediately, how could I do it in my favorite sport, basketball? And over a period of time, I developed a rating called player efficiency rating to rate individual players, and then I developed ratings for teams at the offensive and defensive end. Called Offensive and Defensive Efficiency. I created a website called allyoop.com back in 1996 where I started putting this information out there, and that sort of snowballed, and one thing led to another, and here I am 15 years later writing for ESPN.com about it, and at this huge conference with lots of other people who are interested in it.
That's great. Now tell us a little bit more about PR, and the concept here is one that we run into often in business, which is this idea of individual versus collective performance. So take us to what PR is and why it matters.
Sure. Well, with player efficiency rating, what I was basically trying to determine was what are all the things that the individual player does that contributes to the collective performance, which a lot of those things, especially at the offensive end in basketball, are fairly easily measured. Not perhaps as easily as it is in baseball, but to a large extent you can. So it sort of gives players credits for doing the positive things and debits for the negative contributions in proportion to how much those influence the amount of points scored on each possession, which is really the object of the game, to score as many points as you can out of each possession and to minimize the amount the opponent scores. So that's where player efficiency rating absolutely correlates with winning, which is the ultimate objective. The part that's sort of missing, because basketball statistics don't quite track this as well, as on the defensive end of the floor, where we know block shots, we know steals, we know personal fouls, but about 3/4 of defensive plays don't involve a block, a steal, or a personal foul. So there's a portion of that is a black box that leaves us with a large subjective component. But yet, I mean, we've taken a lot of the mystery out of the rest. So
there is some unknown of it, but the majority of it is being measured. That could sound a little bit intense for somebody in the business saying, well, you're measuring a lot of activities here, and the only thing you care about is how many points were scored. What would you say to that?
Well, all these other things contribute to the points that are scored or not scored.
But does it matter the way I score them?
Yeah, I mean, it matters how many shots you need to get those points, or how many possessions you use. If you score 20 points but you commit 5 turnovers, that's 5 possessions where nobody else could score either. So that obviously subtracts from the whole. If you assist somebody else's points with your passing, I mean, that is obviously a contribution that should be measured and noted and accounted for to our best ability to do so. And similarly, if you score because of someone else's great pass, it's irresponsible of us to give you all the credit for that when your teammate had just as big a hand in it. So all those factors come into play.
And I think this is a really important lesson for folks in the business, where sometimes you might isolate individual performance. And in basketball, you know, the concept of a hero or a great lone player is, you know, sometimes, you know, overhyped on the media. Here we're really talking about the impact of individual players and the end results and how it leads to the end results. So you know what it is to actually score better as a team. Now, you also talk about the principle of perceived performance versus measured performance. And again, the game leading with the emotions and so forth, you tend to think, oh, well, this guy is a great player just based on how I feel about it. But you've created also this concept of game score. So tell us a little about how game score works.
Well, game score was really evolved because a lot of times we see a single game and we think, oh, that was that was fantastically good or that was amazingly awful.
Yeah.
And we kind of want to know where an individual performance we just saw is on the scale. So what I did was sort of create a shorthand where an individual could, because the formula for player efficiency rating is quite complicated. So it's unrealistic for a person to watch a single game and just sort of look at the box score and then be like, oh, he had a PER of 17.3. Like there's too much math involved for that. But game score I devised as sort of a more back of the envelope way for somebody to approximate that, and then that way after especially a very good or a very poor game, you could see almost immediately its historical context. Was that the best performance of the season or of the week or of seasons or in this team's history or however you want to
So I really want to invite people to go out and check out the work you've done, both PR and game score, because they're great lessons for the business there. You also started here by saying, I learned from baseball, brought it into basketball. Are there other sports that you think can learn from basketball today, like for instance soccer?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're starting to see that happen in other sports now. Baseball was the most ready for it because the variables were the easiest to dissect. It's most of baseball is just a batter-pitcher confrontation, and so the variables are very discrete. And basketball gets a little more complicated. Soccer and hockey, I think soccer and hockey are almost hand in hand on this. They're complicated by two things. One, they are flowing sports where a lot of times even possession isn't clearly defined.
Yep.
In baseball and basketball, possession is always clear. There's always one team that's on offense. In soccer, there are times where there's just a scramble, and if you said whose ball is it right now, there wouldn't be a clear answer. And same for hockey. And the other thing is that there are so few scoring plays, and that really complicates the calculation. Whereas in baseball and basketball, it is very easy to see, and in football even too, how much each individual play contributes to scoring. But in a soccer game that ends 1-0 with a goal in the 80th minute, how much did that play in the 4th minute contribute to that goal in the 80th minute?
Do you find that having analytics not only helps teams run themselves better, but also engages with the fans or people watching the performance better? Do you get lots of non-basketball fans now liking basketball because you've created this analytics to assess?
I don't know if I'd say that. I think it's more, people who already have an interest, then this sort of takes it a step further, or it allows people to focus their interest in a different way, I would say. But I don't know if it's like a gateway drug for basketball fans. I wouldn't really say that.
Well, John, thank you very much for your time. Where do people go if they want to find out more?
Sure, ESPN.com/NBA, and you can find all of my statistics there, player efficiency rating, the team rankings for offensive efficiency and defensive efficiency, and all of my columns.
Great. Until next time, I'm Bruno Aziza.